Well, we did it. Route 66 from Chicago to LA. 28 days, 4 adults, 1 dog, 1 cat, all in a Winnebago. This video documents our trip in the fall of 2021, and it shares some info and history that I hope you'll find entertaining and helpful too if you're planning a Route 66 trip yourself. Oh, and if you are planning a Route 66 trip, check out the link in the description to visiting66.com. I got a ton of free info on there to help you out, including a Google map with all the places that are in this video and like literally hundreds more things to do and see on Route 66. I think it'll be really handy for you. But this video is all about Route 66 in Illinois, so let's get to it. My sister and I flew out from LA to Chicago, where we met up with what would be our home for the next month. My parents had driven the Winnebago out so we could start the route right in Chicago. Now, Chicago's a major city with tons of history and stuff to do, but it doesn't really give you the Route 66 flavor, the small town vibe that you're looking for. But nevertheless, since you're here, you might as well do some exploring. We had a few days to spend touring around Chicago, so we began at the iconic Bean, or the Cloud Gate, as it's officially called, but it's actually really cool to just stare at this thing, the way it reflects and distorts the city and people around it. And it's made up of 168 stainless steel plates that are all welded together and then perfectly polished, so there's no visible seams. And you can walk right up and under this thing, and because of that, they actually have to Windex this thing twice a day, and then they even clean this thing with 40 gallons of Tide twice a year. In a short walk from there, you got Buckingham Fountain, which is almost 100 years old, and the style was actually built to mimic the Palace of Versailles. And we actually spent a lot of our first day on these big bus hop-on, hop-off bus tours. I like it a lot for a new city. It kind of gives you some general history and info, but also kind of helps you get a good lay of the land for your future exploring in the city. For lunch, we went to Portillos, which is the real deal if you want to get a Chicago-style hot dog. It comes with mustard, this neon green relish, onions, tomatoes, pickles, celery salt, and these peppers. And I don't really like mustard or relish or pickles. I don't like that briny flavor, but this thing's good. There's something magical about this whole combination that just works. You gotta get one. Then we checked out this architecture boat tour, which I actually really recommend. Chicago's got some of the most innovative architecture in the world, and it was actually the birthplace of the skyscraper. The next morning, we started off at the Starbucks Reserve, which is pretty cool. It's like a Wonka factory for coffee lovers, but long lines, high prices, pretty touristy. It's just okay. And for Chicago-style stuffed pizza, head to Giordano's. They claim that their founders invented stuffed pizza back in 1974. Some people challenge that claim and say other locations are better, but Giordano's is good nonetheless, and they have over 60 locations, so it's easy to find a restaurant. And by the way, if you're in an RV like us, you can spend the night at their convention center. It's just an empty parking lot, but it's an incredible location that you don't really normally get in cities. It's called McCormick Place, and I'll have that in the Google map at visiting66.com. We spent the whole next day at the Museum of Science and Industry. This place is awesome. They got a bunch of cool exhibits, like a combine that you can ride in. They have a real 727 hanging from the ceiling that you can explore. But my hands-down favorite was an actual U-boat that was captured by the Allies during the World War II that's on display. It's actually there on display. This thing is huge, and it's got such an amazing story of how it even got into American hands and then to the museum. Plus, they got a few Mold-O-Rama machines. I'd learned about these a little while ago, so I was so excited to finally get to do these. They're the coolest vending machines I've ever seen in my life, and they're just pure delight. They literally injection mold a plastic figurine right in front of your very eyes. They're from the 60s, and there's only like a few dozen of these vending machines left. And look, the first time I did this, the figure came out all deformed and misshapen. But isn't that awesome? These 50-year-old vending machines aren't perfect, and the museum staff happily gave me a new perfect figurine anyway. For dinner, we went to the Berghoff. Now, this place was founded by a German immigrant, Hermann Berghoff, and he actually began selling beer in the Chicago World's Fair in 1893 for a nickel, and then he even gave you a free sandwich. But then, during Prohibition, Berghoff was able to keep his bar alive by brewing near beer and root beer, which you can actually still get today, and is really, seriously, super delicious. And the German food that they serve here is just so high quality and good. I loved it. After dinner, we headed over to the Sears Tower, now called the Willis Tower, to go check out the Skydeck, because it's actually the highest public viewing area in the United States. It's a really cool view up here. We actually enjoyed it, especially at night. And this is interesting. This isn't the tallest building in the United States. It's technically One World Trade Center, but they only have 94 stories. The Sears Tower has 108. The discrepancy comes from the classification of those antennas on top of the building. The ones on top of the Sears Tower are just called antennas, so they don't count towards the total height. But on top of One World Trade Center, they're considered a spire, so it does count towards the total height of the building. It's kind of weird. Oh, and they have these glass balconies that extend out 4 feet from the side of the building, and I didn't think I was really afraid of heights, but I could not get myself to step on that thing. It's freaky. So that was it for Chicago. It was time to get on Route 66. So the actual beginning of Route 66 has changed a couple times over the years. In 1933, it started right here at Jackson Boulevard and Lakeshore Drive. But before that, the route actually started at Jackson and Michigan Avenue when Route 66 was first officially classified. But when Jackson Boulevard became a one-way street in 1955, this became the new starting point for Route 66 right on Adams Street, 1 block north. That's where you're going to see the Route 66 begin signs today. And I'll have all those starting points on the Google map for you to check out. Our first site was the Castle Car Wash, built in 1925, and was actually the secret hideout of Mr. Al Capone. We stopped at Henry's for one last Chicago dog in Cicero, just a Chicago suburb. Our next stop was for some more food at Del Rey Chicken Basket. This chicken is so good. The breading is just perfect. It's not too thick and crusty. It really complements the chicken well. And they got a great dining room with these red and white checkered tablecloths and a really good neon sign out front too. And in Joliet, you could stop for some ice cream at Rich and Creamy, where they have the Blues Brothers on top. Because this is Joliet. They actually filmed part of Blues Brothers at the prison here. And then right across from Rich and Creamy is this old gas station. And check this out. You can stand on the original Route 66 roadway. Wow, look at that. They all say bar on them. I wonder if that's the brand or manufacturer or something. For us, the best thing in Joliet was the old Joliet prison. It's worth the ticket price of $20. You get to go in and roam around the whole prison, and you can explore the old buildings and jail cells. And they do have some signs posted so you can, understand the history and information and know what you're actually looking at. So this prison actually held inmates from 1858 to 2002, and it was also the filming location for the prison where Jake Blues was released at the beginning of the Blues Brothers. Joliet also has some other Blues Brother surprises sprinkled around town. Next up is a Route 66 classic, the Gemini Giant. So this is actually an example of what are called muffler men. And muffler men are fiberglass statues that are over 20 feet tall, and there was a bunch of them made in the 50s and 60s as roadside icons for automotive muffler shops. But now they've been repurposed and are all over Route 66. And then down the road a bit, you hit the town of Gardner, where you'll find this restored streetcar diner, which is over 100 years old. You can't go inside, but you can look through the windows and see the wooden benches and stools and the chrome countertop. It's really cool. And then in the town of Dwight, you got a cool little downtown area with this old railroad depot and the first national bank designed by Mr. Frank Lloyd Wright in 1905. Dwight also has Ambler's Texaco gas station, which now serves as a visitor center, and is actually one of the longest operating gas stations on Route 66. They even still have these service bells that ring when you step on them or run over them. And it was actually built in this cottage style to kind of look like the residential houses around it, so it blended in a bit more. It's a really fun stop. So this is hilarious to me, but they're actually kind of common along Route 66. It's a pedestrian tunnel that goes under Route 66, so it made it safer and easier to cross. This was built in 1933. There was that much traffic on Route 66 back then that they felt they needed a tunnel. It's crazy! Here you can actually see some original Route 66 pavement on the right there, which is undrivable, but it's open as kind of like a bike path now. It's pretty cool to see. There's even this old stretch called Memory Lane that you can actually drive on, like original Route 66 pavement, and they got some Burma Shave signs they put up too. And you gotta stop at Funk's Grove for some maple syrup. But call ahead, because like the sign says here, they do sell out every season. But they did have a little bit of their bourbon barrel aged syrup left for us to try, so we got to sample that, which was great. And the Funk family has been making syrup since the late 1800s. They literally just put thousands of taps in the trees all around them and harvest a whole bunch of maple syrup. And I actually did a whole interview with the Funk family, but I lost the footage. I'm so bummed. But here's a little bit that I was able to find that was saved somehow.
As often the first question people walk in with is, so why do you spell syrup wrong? Yeah. But it's just an old spelling. So when Webster was writing his first dictionaries, he had both spellings and two different definitions. So SIRUP he defined as the product made by boiling sap, and then SYRUP he said was the product made by adding sugar to fruit juice. Oh, okay. Kind of like a canned peach syrup, that kind of syrup. And so he had this difference in definitions way back then. And Hazel, who put this in a trust, as far as she was concerned, the SIRUP was the right spelling. It's the pure maple syrup, and so we kept it because that's what she wanted.
Sure, I like it.
And then heading into the town of Atlanta, we got another muffler man, this time a Paul Bunyan with the hot dog. And then heading on into town, we find that they also have a Route 66 arcade museum, where admission is free, you just pay to play the games. And they've got old pinball and video games back from the 1930s up to the 80s. And then heading on into Lincoln, Illinois. This is hilarious to me. They have a watermelon monument because it was near the site that Abraham Lincoln christened the town with the juice of a watermelon. Lincoln's also got the world's largest covered wagon with Mr. Abe Lincoln sitting on top, and it's recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records. By the way, it's crazy how much stuff is on Route 66. You can't drive more than like 10 minutes without stopping. Coming up next is the Cozy Dog Drive-In, and you gotta stop here. So I did actually get to interview Josh Waldmire, the owner of the Cozy Dog, and I didn't lose the footage for this one. So I'll have a link to that whole interview and tour in the description. But this place is famous for their cornbread-coated wieners on a stick. Josh's grandfather, Ed, actually invented the batter that allowed you to dip a corn dog right into the deep fryer, so it could be done quick. You didn't have to bake it. Just a really cool place with a ton of memorabilia inside. Family run. You definitely gotta stop. If you like Abraham Lincoln, Springfield is the place for you. It is the Abraham Lincoln center of the universe. First off, we got Lincoln's tomb, which is massive. He's basically been here since he was assassinated, and he's also joined by his youngest 3 sons and Mrs. Lincoln. It's really impressive. Next up, you got the Lincoln home. This is actually the home that Lincoln and his family lived in from 1844 to 1861. And they've restored it to look exactly like it did when he lived there. And not just the home, but the whole street, too. It's really a cool place to visit. And then, of course, we got the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, which is actually really well done. It feels like Disney level even. But don't let that turn you off. It's got a lot of good quality information, too. Just well done. A good balance of fun and informative. And when we came out of the museum, there happened to be this car show going on, where Bob Waldmire's VW Bus was on display. Bob was the inspiration for Fillmore, the bus in the Cars movie, and is also Josh Waldmire's uncle, who is the owner of the Cozy Dog, which I interviewed. You'll find Bob's art all over Route 66. He was a really cool, interesting guy. The whole Waldmire family is just pure Route 66. And then on the way out of town, we stopped at the Cozy Dog again for some more Cozy Dogs and cheese on a stick, which is oh so good. Out of Springfield, we hit the Litchfield Route 66 Museum, and there are a you-know-what load of Route 66 museums along the route, but honestly, they're all pretty cool and unique and kind of worth stopping at every one, I gotta say. And same with gas stations. If you like old gas stations, Route 66 is the place for you. But they're really all pretty cool and worth stopping at. Especially this old Shell station from 1926, because you could walk inside and smell that old gasoline wood smell that's been permeating for 100 years. And then you just stumble upon stuff like this massive rocking chair, but don't get too excited. There's an even bigger one coming up. Stay tuned. And then you got Henry's Rabbit Ranch. I'm bummed we actually missed this because it was closed, which happens for a lot of these things on Route 66, so get used to it. But it's a Route 66 information center and gift shop with rabbits, with bunnies, so maybe we didn't miss much, but it sounds pretty cool. I wish we could have seen it, but we did get to see all of his Volkswagen rabbits plunge nose first out front like Cadillac Ranch. And then a little bit off the route, but definitely worth the detour to Collinsville, is the world's largest bottle of ketchup. How can you not love this thing? 170 feet tall, 100,000 gallons of ketchup or water. And I got to meet up with Judy and Mike, the curators of this giant ketchup bottle, to learn all about the history of this thing and the restoration process and why the hell there's a giant bottle of ketchup here in the first place. It was a great interview. They're super fun. I'll have the link to that whole interview and tour in the description. Well, that's it, people. That's Route 66 in Illinois. But don't worry, I'm going to be doing all the other states. This is just one state out of more, however many states there are in Route 66, so I'll be getting all those out. But hope you enjoyed Route 66 in Illinois. Again, check out visiting66.com for a bunch more videos and the Google map with all the points of interest and places to stop. You're going to love it. Seriously, you got to check it out. But that's it. That's all I got for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in Missouri.